Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Meet the Parents podcast, where every week we bring you a mix of real parents and real stories from both the mums and dad's side of the fence. Now, if I sound a bit under the weather tonight, that's because I'm just getting over a proper full-on bout of man flu. It was touch and go for a while, I'll have to admit, but rest assured that I did have on speed dial both A&D and a priest, just in case we needed to administer the last rites, so it was all under control. Anyhow, joining me tonight in our no expenses spared recording studio, well, Skype anyway, is Amie. Good evening, Amie.
Hello!
So, on this week's show, we're going to be talking about food, glorious food, and Amie's return to work after 2 years away. So let's start with a subject close to my heart, or at least my stomach, namely food. Now, Amie, little miss has just turned 2, hasn't she?
She has, yeah.
I know you're not only quite a foodie household, but you've experience of living all over the world. So, yeah, does she yet share your love of food, and how have you gone about introducing her to new tastes?
We've made a real conscious effort to expose her to very different flavours. We have a hilarious video of her trying chili for the first time about 3 weeks ago, and we were shocked that she sat there and went, "Ma, Ma." And I was like, okay, I can't eat that much chili, and I've grown up in Asia. And she asks for mustard, and she has quite a mature palate in a lot of ways. But then, she doesn't like basic things like red grapes. So she is a normal toddler in many ways as well. But yeah, we do make a conscious effort to cook in front of her, to cook with her. I'm the baker, my other half is the cook, so we kind of divide and conquer both realms. But we have a bread maker, and she puts the ingredients in the bread maker, and she loves that. And every Friday we make pizzas from scratch using our own bread and dough and stuff. And she loves doing that, and she helps us put the toppings on. So yeah, I think there's no guarantee that she'll eat what she makes, but she's definitely got a love of the process.
Excellent. And funnily enough, we're very much the same. So my wife is much more the baker, so she makes a lot of cakes and such like with the kids. And they,
woman after my own heart.
Yeah, and they love all that stuff, don't they? Because it's messy and it's sticky, and they get to lick the spoons and all that stuff. And I'm much more the cook. So, yeah, I mean, we love our food in our household as well. So, my family is Malaysian. So, I also grew up in a household, you mentioned chilies, and my mother put chilies and spices in pretty much everything given half a chance, excluding ice cream. And even then, I think she would have done if she could have done. So, yeah, I like my strong flavours as well. And yet, the boys at least, despite our best efforts, they're quite suspicious about their food, or at least they were to begin with. So it took them a long time to get used to the texture and taste of meat.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, I think it was a texture thing, and the only way they would eat meat, whether it was chicken or whatever, was if it came in bite-sized breadcrumb-coated chunks that look and taste absolutely nothing like proper meat. Although, having said that, the last couple of years, they are totally into roasts now, so they do like a nice Sunday roast dinner, which is great, because that's one of my specialities. But it's only been the last year or so that they treat rice with less suspicion than...
Rice? What's wrong with rice?
I know. I wonder whether it's just that it's relatively bland and tasteless, but they've always looked at it as if I've just served them up a lump of nitroglycerin or something. But it's bizarre, isn't it? Sometimes it's the least offensive foodstuffs in the world that they either take offence to, or they just turn their nose up at, isn't it? Whereas I guess like with Little Miss, she doesn't blink twice at chilies.
Yeah, I think that's probably because she just looks up to her dad, and he's quite the chili fiend. His stepdad is from Mauritius, so they've obviously learnt to cook with chilies, and he has curry every time we go around there and stuff. So I have to say, I live in fear, even when I was pregnant, of her being a fussy eater, because I was so bad as a kid. If you gave me what I liked, I would eat it till the cows came home. I had a healthy diet. It was just quite limited. And weirdly, I didn't like beef burgers. What child doesn't like beef burgers or bubblegum? it was weird, the things that I would and wouldn't eat. And I live in fear that my daughter will end up that way, because they say it can change even if they're good eaters as toddlers. And so I made a conscious effort. I did loads of reading when I was pregnant, and they said if you eat lots of flavours when you're pregnant and when you're breastfeeding, their palate will adjust. But when I was breastfeeding, if I ate citrus, garlic or chili, she would refuse to feed. And we figured that out within the first 3 weeks. It was such a strong aversion for her. So we knocked that on the head, and I basically didn't eat anything of interest for the 4 to 6 months that I was breastfeeding. So hopefully that won't kind of make a resurgence in her later life. But apparently it can be a control thing, which I wouldn't be surprised if for me it was, because we moved around so much. It was kind of maybe something I latched onto, that I could control my diet when we were moving country yet again or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? And I think we're quite lucky, and I almost don't want to say it in case I end up cursing them, but all 3 kids are great when it comes to eating vegetables in a way that, not so much myself, but certainly my brother was the world's fussiest eater when it came to veg. He would only eat a couple of particular types of vegetables, and they had to be cooked in just a certain way and all that kind of stuff. So, I guess having said that, I guess we're quite lucky that any fussiness regarding our kids' eating habits have been, nothing more really than a matter of personal preference. Now, and we both know that Hannah, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight, has had issues with Toby having reflux, which is that's tough to cope with. And I guess at least the one upside of it is that it's easy to spot and diagnose. But when it comes to things like food intolerances, they can be much less immediately obvious to spot. And you've discovered this with Little Miss, haven't you?
Yeah, so our daughter's lactose intolerant, and probably was since birth. In fact, almost definitely was. But I was actually lactose intolerant as well after I went travelling on a gap year when I was 18, which included China. Got pretty severe food poisoning from chilies, no less. Basically, they think that's what brought it on. The likelihood is I was probably lactose intolerant as a baby as well, so I had a susceptibility to it. Pregnancy then cured me, which is just like wonderful, because I'm now eating cheese till the cows come home. Ha 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 ha. But because of that, I have quite a dairy light diet. So when I was breastfeeding, in hindsight, the times that we would really struggle with Little Miss were probably after I'd had a pizza or a really milky coffee or whatever, because obviously the lactose does come through your breast milk. But because I didn't have a kind of normal dairy diet, we didn't pick up on it straight away. And it wasn't until we started moving her onto bottles that we really clocked that there was a problem. And luckily, because I had been lactose intolerant, and actually my partner has she's now 9-year-old sister, she was lactose intolerant from birth as well, so we were kind of already clued in that this was a thing, what to look for, what the symptoms were. So we actually ended up, once we'd spotted the signs, we diagnosed it quite quickly. She went on an elimination diet, which basically means she eats nothing that could be an allergen for her. Obviously it meant that I had to stop eating everything while we breastfed her, and she went on specialist formula milk as well. And this all kicked off just as we started weaning, so we held off on weaning for a few weeks while we tested everything. And yeah, lo and behold, then when you introduce things bit by bit, you see if the effects come back. And obviously they did. So we knew pretty quick that she was lactose intolerant.
So you actually, you self-diagnosed her?
Well, no, we did. I took her to the GP and I said, so we've kind of seen these signs. I used to be lactose intolerant. Her aunt, obviously who's a child, is or was, so we kind of know the signs. We've started an elimination diet because we know the process, but we just wanted to basically check in with you, make sure we didn't get a rap on the wrists for not having gone and got the red book signed, basically. And the doctor then said, yeah, you're doing everything right, we'll refer you to a nutritionalist at the hospital. And when we saw the nutritionist, they said, well, we can do a blood test, which will basically be very definitive. But there's kind of no need to do that for a baby or a young child, because it can be quite distressing. Finding a vein on a small child or a baby is incredibly difficult, and an elimination diet pretty much tells you everything you need to know. They say that if they get it as a baby, they will probably grow out of it. So you're supposed to try and reintroduce a small amount of lactose every 6 months up until the age of 4 to see if their effects come back. I can confirm after 2 tests since she was 6 months, she's definitely still lactose intolerant, and it's a miserable few days for all involved.
Oh, no. So what alternative products are available for her?
Loads, actually. So I was first diagnosed in 2008, and there was a really, really limited range. And in just that 8 years, there's just a vast amount in the shops now. So we use a product range by Arla called Lacto Free, and it's basically cow's milk that they've already put the lactase enzyme in to churn up the lactose for you before you have to consume it, because our daughter can't have soy or any goat's milk products either, which most adults who are lactose intolerant they're only like 1 or 2% lactose in those types of products, and the adult body can process them no problem. But hers being so small, she can't. So yeah, we use lacto free, but we also have things like Koyo, which is yogurt made from coconut, or she has mango kind of melted, like we freeze it, then you put it in the blender, and she thinks it's ice cream and stuff. So yeah, there's absolutely loads on the market now. Italy, by the way, if you're going on holiday, also has a fantastic lactose-free variety because it's so rife in their culture.
I mean, you make pizzas at home every Friday, as you say, and you can control then toppings and so on. But I guess it's more restrictive in terms of taking her out to places like Pizza Hut and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite stressful. Since she's been of an age where, you're not just taking out a pouch, which even when we were weaning, that I had to hand make everything because so many of the jars and pouches actually contain cheese or cream or milk ingredients. It was just so much easier to not faff around. We found like 3 different jars from 3 different brands that we knew we could use on a plane or wherever. Otherwise, I handmade everything. And then when she turned 1 and she could start to really eat proper food, it actually became so much more stressful because all my friends would start just buying things in shops when we were out. And I always had to have something in my bag in case they didn't have a dairy-free option, because every sandwich that's prepackaged will have butter on it.
Yep.
You can't risk giving her any kind of cookies, anything with chocolate in it, anything that has butter, just everything. You'd be surprised. They'll usually cook vegetables in butter in restaurants, and we found out the hard way on numerous occasions that many waiters and waitresses either aren't diligent enough when they ask for what the ingredients are from the chef, or they remember what the chef has said wrong, or the chef, for all intents and purposes, forgets, and that's fine, it's a human error, but pretty frustrating when it means that you're up with a baby with diarrhea all night,
Yeah, the consequences for you personally are quite significant.
Yeah, they're pretty grim. The other things are like, I probably should have said this earlier, the other symptoms to look out for, sort of like bloating, wind, diarrhea, vomiting, but also skin conditions like eczema. Our daughter gets very, very severe diaper rash, which she doesn't get any other time except when she has a lactose reaction. It's basically looking for anything out of the ordinary for your child. It's pretty broad, but yeah, it's not that enjoyable for anybody.
No, absolutely. And so you were talking about the range of lactose-free products that are available now. Back in my dim and distant past, well, the early 2000s anyway, which is, that's pre-Facebook.
It's starting to feel like a while ago, isn't it?
Yeah, it's practically the dark ages now. Isn't it? but way back then, I worked for Tesco on their healthy eating and organic ranges, and I actually worked on the development and launch of their Free-From range of
God, is
wheat
it that old?
and gluten-free foods. Yeah, we launched it in 2002, I think it was.
Kudos to Tesco.
Yeah. Now the story behind it is that there was a lady named Patricia whose son had some behavioural issues, and he was mistakenly diagnosed by, I think, 2 or 3 different doctors with ADHD, but the root problem was that he actually had celiac disease, so that's a comparatively rare hypersensitivity to gluten. So she wrote a letter to Tesco CEO Terry Leahy to point out the lack of products which her son could safely eat, because it's a bit like lactose. Gluten is in so many everyday foods, from pasta to bread, cakes, biscuits, all that kind of stuff. So he wrote back to her offering her a job to develop a range, and that's how Free-From Foods and Packaging came to be in mainstream supermarkets. So yeah,
Wow.
that's a little blast from my past there, and of course it's not just kids who are susceptible to developing intolerances. You know, you've mentioned that you were lactose intolerant as well, and I mean, although I've never had anything serious, I've had some minor issues with food intolerances too. So, nothing particularly strong or full blown, but certainly a mild intolerance to certain wheat products, so things like white bread. And Belgian wheat beers that used to leave me feeling, bloated and tired. The kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that us adults often just write off as, a dodgy tummy or, the traditional post-lunch, dip. And I ended up going to see a kinesiologist who was recommended to me by some friends. So what she did was she tested me by placing a series of vials containing different foodstuffs on my chest, and then testing my ability to resist against her pushing down on my arms. And so when she got to the vial with white flour in it, I literally couldn't push back against even the slightest pressure. And it was the most bizarre sensation ever. To this day, I'm convinced she was actually Devon Brown in disguise. But she also put me on an elimination diet to cut out a few specific things, and it really did make a difference. So
it does.
But the scientist in me is still trying to work out exactly how that testing process works.
Yeah, I wonder how they figured out that was a viable test. The thing I would say is that certainly with lactose intolerance, I think personally that there is an element of genetics, because my dad has since found out that he is also lactose intolerant. But obviously when he was born in the 60s, it wasn't a thing. And when I was born in the 80s, it also wasn't really a thing. And although I kind of was okay throughout my childhood, it's obviously then I have a susceptibility to it, which is why when I had gastroenteritis, or however you say it, it then came back, and then obviously my daughters had it. So I do think it's probably a tendency to run in families. But humans actually aren't supposed to eat any dairy products from any other animal. Our bodies aren't actually made to have those enzymes. They've evolved to be able to produce them. So it's not surprising then that we have all these issues.
As you say, I think these are issues that have been around and in existence for quite a long time, but it's only really been the last maybe 20 or 30 years that general awareness and diagnosis of them, and subsequently the treatment of them, has really become widely known and available. So I guess that could only be a good thing. Anyhow, I think that's probably more than enough discussion about food and food-related conditions. I'm now absolutely starving, so while we take a quick break to grab something suitably unhealthy to eat, here's a message from our sponsors. Nominations are now open for both the Bib and Mad Parent Vlogging Awards. We here at Meet the Parents podcast aren't going to ask for your vote. We so are. We're just entering for the fun of taking part. We really want to win. And we won't send a large man with a baseball bat round to your house if you don't vote for us. He'll have a sledgehammer instead. This advert has been brought to you by the Campaign for Honest and Authentic Voting for Blog Owners and YouTubers, or ChavBoy for short. Thank you for listening. Now in the immortal words of Bob Geldof, just give us your f***ing votes. I'm going to resist the temptation to start singing hi ho, it's off to work we go, because...
Thank you.
Mostly because someone will only liken me to Dopey, and I'm not really sure how you feel about being compared to Snow White, Amie, but...
Not great.
But as we discussed a while back, you've just recently returned to the working world after 2 years of maternity leave and unemployment. So,
Indeed.
So first of all, tell us what it is you're doing now.
So I'm now working in a marketing agency that's quite niche. We basically bridge the gap between brands and the education sector. So things like the Royal Mail Young Letter Writers competition, or we also did the Royal Mail Christmas stamp design competition last year. But we basically offer a way for brands to talk to the education sector. And that includes childminders and nannies and people as well.
As a mother with a young child, obviously, that must be great to be working with that sector.
It certainly offers me a lot more insight than I ever would have had before. I don't know if I'd have got the job 3 years ago. It's very interesting. And my mum's worked in education for the past 15 years as a teacher and pupil referral unit officer. And
so how does it feel now, being back at work after an extended period away? I mean, has it been a big adjustment I guess both for you and for your other half?
Oh, we're both knackered. Nothing's changed. We're just knackered for different reasons now. It has been an adjustment. It's been incredibly stressful, incredibly hectic. We moved house, obviously, then Little Miss started her new nursery, and it's just all been a bit go, 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 which is always the way, isn't it? But yeah, it's definitely been an adjustment for all involved. Getting used to not necessarily always being here in the evenings has been tough.
What would you say has been the single toughest thing you've had to adapt to?
Having no time. That was not really something I had ever appreciated. When I was off and I was job hunting and looking after Little Miss full time and blogging and everything else, you spend the whole time thinking, oh, I wish there was more time in the day. Then I find myself thinking, I wish there was more time in the week. Like, it gets to Saturday morning and you cannot see our landing for the different colour-coded piles of laundry. My partner laughs and says that we have some sort of laundry mole that appears and makes little hills in our landing. We do our food shopping online, so it gets delivered. So that's something that we don't kind of have to think about at the weekend. But, desperately trying to make the most of what little time I now have with Little Miss and the other half, of course. But equally, also then trying to find some time for yourself. And as a blogger, that's not something I want to slide because that's kind of my passion and my hobby. But equally, I do find myself thinking, sod it. Do you know what? It's 9 o'clock. I am absolutely dog tired. The last thing I want to do is sit at my laptop and write a blog post. So we'll see where that goes. You should feel privileged, Tim, that I'm here talking to you tonight.
Absolutely I do. But I guess, it's difficult, isn't it? Because as you say, there are so many demands on your time, and it's difficult to spread yourself so thin, isn't it? And often the thing that goes is, you look after everything you need to look after to with Little Miss and with the house. And the thing that often goes is the time for you and your partner's relationship, and and the time for yourself as well.
But you must find that as well. I mean, I can't imagine having to split the time you've got between 3 kids as well. Like, one is enough.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy, because clearly it isn't. But I think after a while you get into the routine, and I know it was certainly a big adjustment for my wife, who took essentially a year off after each of our 3 kids. So she had an extended time off on maternity leave and then went back to work. And I think on each of those occasions, that adjustment, partly having less time, as you said, but also having to manage having to juggle the routine of drop-offs and pickups and juggling your own work and getting used to a different team or a different boss in a couple of on 1 or 2 occasions. That all takes its toll, but it does. I guess after a while you do find the routine that works, even if it's one that still leaves you feeling permanently knackered and feeling like you're never doing anything more than keeping the lid on the to-do list that keeps piling up. But it's not easy for anyone. And I think whether you have 1 child, 3 children, 5 children, 7 children, however many it is, there's always more things to do in your day and your week than you ever really have time for.
It's very true.
So, talking about Little Miss, I mean, how's she coped with the change?
We've been really, really proud of her, actually. She's done brilliantly. I think we're quite lucky in that she only does 4 days a week at nursery, and Wednesdays is her day with Nina, my mum. And that kind of breaks up the week quite nicely for her. I think it feels like she's got kind of a bit of a respite day on the middle because she's quite tired by nursery. She only turned 2 last week. And I think that also gives her not only a respite in terms of kind of mass amounts of stimulation and other mental children, but also in terms of kind of reloading on family time. And from our perspective, it gives us one day where we don't feel quite so guilty if one of us can't get home in time or whatever. But she has done brilliantly, and she's taken like a duck to water to her new nursery, and she's really gone easy on us with all this change that she's had to endure. We're really proud, I have to say.
No, it sounds like she's coping with it brilliantly. And of course, you alluded to it as well. It's not just us as parents who get tired with that change in routine, but a day at nursery is incredibly tiring for a toddler as well.
Yeah.
So for her to be coping so well is, that's fantastic.
And it's a long day for her as well. I mean, at the moment she's doing 8 till pretty much 6 o'clock. And because of where our nursery is, I can't do the nursery run because my partner drives to work. He's a bit more local than I am, but he still has about an hour's drive, and I have to commute into London, and the station is opposite direction to the nursery, and we only have 1 car. So that's that's been really tough actually, because I would love to be the person picking her up and dropping her off and hearing about her day and, you know, checking in with the nursery staff. But I've kind of had to learn to trust my partner with that one. But at the moment, my partner's not getting into work till somewhere between 9 and 9:30, which obviously when he's got to leave at 5 to 5 to make sure he can get back for the 6 o'clock pickup, it's not great for him. Like, it doesn't look great, and he's worried about perceptions there. So
Yeah.
I work one day from home a week, so that there's one day at least, and we try and coincide that with his day in London and doing meetings and stuff, so that I have the car, but I can walk to the nursery if I have to with her. So there's at least one day in the week where I get to do it, and equally where he's not worrying.
Oh, that's
So
good.
yeah, it's been a lot of chopping and changing routine.
Yeah, and I guess it's helpful where at least you've got some kind of arrangement between the two of you where it's not one of you doing all of it every single day. At least you're managing to balance it a little bit between the two of you.
We try, but it does feel like the other half is doing the lion's share at the moment. Equally, I've done the lion's share for the last 2 years, so, you know, not to be bitter or anything, but I think his time has come.
Swings and roundabouts. Finally, here's the $64,000 question. So, is being at work all day more or less challenging than being at home?
I don't want to sit on the fence. I don't want to be that person. But there is a lot of me that says I don't think you can compare. I think at the moment, I feel as though being at work is harder. But that's not true at all. Being at work is easier. I was going to say because it's new that it feels harder, but the reality is at the moment, the novelty of being able to eat my lunch and have a cup of coffee. And today I ate a donut with only marginal guilt, because it wasn't like I had a toddler who was going to look at me and say, why can't I have the donut? So yeah, being at work is definitely easier from that perspective, but it comes with its own challenges, as I've already said. And I'm sure in another 3 months, I'll be going through a whole different wave where I'm thinking it's like 70 times harder being at work than being a stay-at-home mum. So I think they'll probably even out.
Yeah, I often complained about how tiring being at work can be, but actually, particularly after an extended period at home over the Christmas holidays or something, I'll often joke that I'm coming back to work for a rest, but actually I mean it.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Dave last week that, you know, I don't really think that I'm cut out of the right stuff for the challenge of being a stay-at-home parent. I think I'm actually much happier sticking to having to deal with grown-ups who act like children as opposed to children who act like grown-ups. So before we go, what have you been up to recently, Amie?
Well, it was little Miss's second birthday last week. I think I mentioned that earlier. That was lovely. We've kind of had an extended celebration with various family members over the 2 weekends. And it was nice because she kind of understood what was going on a bit more this year, and she blew out her own candles and stuff, which was nice. Sang birthday, happy to herself most of the day. And you were asking me the other week when I was on what I felt of video. And it's actually spurred me on to do my first video project. So I'm working on that at the moment. We'll see how that turns out. I might not ever publish it. But so far, we'll see.
It's been a relatively quiet week for me, made quieter still by the fact that I spent most of the weekend in bed with the lurgy. But Heather and the kids did their first trip of the year to the mecca of coloured plastic bricks, otherwise known as Legoland, where of course everything was awesome. And no, I'm not going to sing the song.
Everything is awesome. I'll sing it for you. I said I'd bring the pizzazz. It's fine.
And that's it for this episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back again next week, but in the meantime, here is where you can find the two of us online.
You can find me at findingourfeet.co.uk and on Twitter at findingourfeet.
And I'm at ThatchamDad, and my blog is slouchingtowardsThatcham.com. So you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website, and via a variety of podcasting apps. And do please give us a follow on Twitter and Facebook as well. And finally, if you're voting in either the BritMum's Brilliance in Blogging Awards or the TOTS 100 Mad Awards, do please consider nominating us in either the Fresh Voice category for the Bibs or the Best New Blog category for the Mads. We are Meet the Parents podcast. Our URL is meettheparentspodcast.com, and you can cast your vote for this or any of the other categories at either britmums.com/awards or tots100.co.uk/awards. I'll attach all the links you need over on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com. So thanks very much for listening, and do please join us again next week. Good night.
Bye.